What's going on, everybody? Cheers. Happy Wednesday, or whatever day of the week it is when you're watching or listening to this. Welcome to the With Her Two Hands podcast, where each week we celebrate the women who build, fix, and make the things that make the world go round with her own two hands. I am your host, Bogi, and tonight's episode is both poignant and powerful. We are joined by Dora Marquez, which is obviously not her real name. That is actually the full name of Dora the Explorer. If you didn't know that, now you know. And she is going to share her journey through the world of auto mechanics and fabrication, which, as we all know, is a career path that is requires exceptional skill, but also, unfortunately, is also accompanied with exceptional adversity, especially for women and other minorities. Dora's story is one of absolutely incredible resilience. She has faced extreme sexism and racism in her career, challenges so severe that they once culminated in an EEOC legal battle, one that she won. But despite all of these obstacles, her passion has not faded at all. Her love for the automotive industry just continues to fuel her, and she remains an absolutely vital part of this industry, one that I am so glad that she has stayed a part of, because she has been an inspiration to me over the years as well. We've taken a lot of steps to protect her identity. We are going to be altering her voice and altering her image. So we're going to have a cartoon character on with us tonight. And just know that as a result of that, what that does is it allows us to really speak candidly. Very often when I have female guests, or female guests, all of our guests are female. Very often when I have guests on who have struggled with sexism or racism or other sorts of harassment on the job, they're often hesitant to talk really candidly about that experience for fear of any sort of blowback from that, whether it be losing a job or not being hireable, or just that fear of people seeing them differently within the industry. And so by speaking anonymously, we're kind of able to cut through that a little bit and speak a little bit more candidly. So I'm really excited about that opportunity. We are actually at the moment having a little bit of difficulty with the technology, but I think she's going to be joining us here in just a moment. I want to thank you guys for being a part of this series and for being here to tune into this very important episode. We're going to be discussing all of her experiences, why she is stuck with it, how she handled it. And I hope that we'll all have something that we can take away from this and be inspired by, and that we can carry into our regular lives and our careers. So stand by one moment. Let me see if we've got the thumbs up from my behind the scenes folks. And it looks like we do. All right. Awesome. I am going to bring on Miss Dora Marquez. Hi, Dora.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for being willing to join us today and to share your experience. I'm glad we were able to get the technology to work. You make a lovely cartoon character, so thank you for that.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about. Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk about my experience. It has been a journey to stay in the automotive industry, and it is something that I love. And I just really wanted to share some of the behind the scenes that happened to a lot of us, and to share that we can go through the awful but come back out okay and still persevere.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you love this industry. I've known you for a long time. I know you love the industry. And so often we find ourselves not wanting to share the dark side, because we do want people to join the industry. We want more women, we want more minorities. But at a certain point, I want to be clear to the audience at home, like we want to look at the positive, and we want to look at what to do with this. But if we don't talk about the bad, it will never change. We have to bring it into the light.
That is very true. That is very, very true. We need everybody to, have clear eyes and expectations when walking into this industry, and as well as to know, that we can be in part of this industry and change it, and not so much just change it, but more so be able to fit and be able to work through these issues that we might be having. as a whole, women has not been working for a very long time, earning real wages and being able to have full autonomy for our lives, such as bank accounts and being able to be homeowners and stuff. It's only been within about the past 50 years. So we can't expect some pushback from, these industries, but also know that we are making changes. When I began 20 some years ago to now, things have changed so much. I've seen amazing progress that I never thought I would see in my lifetime.
Yeah. I really appreciate that you bring that up, the kind of reference point. Like, it's something that I have to remind myself of often, is like, okay, women have only had the right to vote for not that long. It's less than 100 years since women's suffrage came around, and we didn't have the right to have our own credit cards or our own bank accounts, or buy a house without a man signing off on it. So thank you for bringing that up. It is important. We often get stuck in the minutia of it's not changing fast enough, but remembering that, yes, things are changing. Yeah.
We do. And that was something that I struggled with when I was thinking about leaving the industry, was, that I had a reminder from my mother that it's not just this industry. It is working as a whole, being a woman, that it's not just our industry. And she highly encouraged me to really think about where my passion lied, rather than just kind of want to be really embarrassed about everything and run away, which is kind of my default,
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you acknowledging that, and you're not alone in that. I think a lot of people's default is that, right? There's a very natural fight or flight instinct that we all have, right? And there's a natural instinct that says, this is painful. I don't want to continue to subject myself to this pain.
Very much so. And it has been a conscious choice to fight rather than run away. And it's not in my nature to do that. So it's been tough, but it's been well worth it.
So let's talk a little bit about your experience, just not even the sexism, the racism yet, but let's talk about just, what your career is, how long you've been in the industry, what your skill set is. Let's establish a little bit for folks who are never going to know actually who you are, because we've got a cartoon character here. But what about this cartoon character? What is your past that you can tell us about your career a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I attended auto tech in high school. And after that, I was super pumped about the industry. I had an amazing teacher that made me believe that I could do this. And when I apprenticed at a transmission shop for some time, and actually I didn't apply for that job. I actually had applied for Firestone, and my real name, very much sounds like a man's name if you change a couple of letters. So I think they thought I was a man applying for an entry-level lube tech. And so when I showed up, they saw me and they referenced my name in the man's name version of it. And I told them, no, this is me. And they said, the position's been filled. I bawled my eyes out and I went to the, parking lot and cried, and I dried my tears up and said, okay, what's next? And right next door was a transmission shop. And I walked in and said, do you guys need help? Any help? I will scrub the floors. I will be a parts cleaner. I need an in the auto industry. And a while later, I found out that they took me on as a vet. They thought I was going to be around for maybe about 2 weeks tops. And when I stuck around, then we had a conversation of exactly what my expectations were, and also, to grow my toolbox. And I'm really grateful that that kind of bet turned into an actual job. But that just kind of goes back to what was the expectation back then of a female technician.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so since then, you've been now in the industry for how long?
Oh my goodness, 23 years is what I did the math today.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So not a newbie to the field.
No.
You've been working with your hands, building and making and fixing things for 20 years, 20 plus years.
Yes.
And so you've been through a couple of shops. You've been through a couple of different environments. So they made a bet that you weren't going to last. Did it turn out to be a decent shop that you were at, or did that turn into a?
Yes, it was. No, it was. It was a great shop. I mean, granted, they did hire me on a bet. And actually, my interview then was, "Hey, you see that box truck? Go take the dry shaft off." And I borrowed some tools, and I did. And they said, "Okay, we'll go put it back on." And I did. And they said, "Well, do you have your tools?" And I lied. I told them I did. I thought I was going to use my grandfather's tools. Luckily enough, he went and he bought me a little toolbox set and let me use, his trucks. So he was a Peterbilt owner, driver, operator, and he had quite an assortment. So I would borrow his specialty tools, but he bought me my own set. Anyways, that turned into like a 2-year thing, and then that shop consolidated, and I learned everything from brakes to. At that point, I had never worked on anything that was front wheel drive. I never worked on cars before, only trucks, and so I had only seen rear wheel drive vehicles. So I kind of freaked out when I saw a front wheel drive vehicle, and to their credit, they just told me, "Figure it out. We will be right behind you." And I told them, "I'm scared." And they said, "Okay, well, if you're that scared, go home." And so I said, "No, I don't want to go home." So they said, "Then try it." And so I did. And I credit them to being very accepting of me. And they paired me up with various techs so that I learned different things from them. I did do a lot of the grunt work, but I was also very much a part of a lot of like the big stuff. And they trusted me with a lot of things, and I grew immensely from it.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So you had a good experience at your first
Very
shop.
good experience. Yes. And then I want to say the next couple of shops thereafter were really good experiences. From there, when they consolidated their shop, because they had several shops and they consolidated, and they let me know that I was going to be laid off because I was the last to come on board. And so they set me up with a position at a freestanding Sears Automotive store, where I did tires and suspension. And it was kind of right across the street. So it was great. It was, right in the alley of like what I was working with at the time, but also, I grew from that. I learned to do alignments and other stuff. And it was great. And that was also a great working environment. I did face a lot of the shop banter and stuff, but it was never anything that I couldn't handle, either with like quick wit or just telling them, "Hey, you know what, so long as this is not directed to me, and they were, shop talking about other things, then, I kind of set boundaries of what I was okay with and not okay with. And they very much accepted that and respected me and helped me grow. So I don't think I faced.
I want to pause you right there for a second, because I love that.
Sure.
Establishment of boundaries and defining the difference, right? And it reminds me, I always used to say to people that the difference between banter and sexual harassment is, A, was it directed at me versus is it just a joke? But also,
Correct.
Did I specifically tell you that this crosses the line and then you kept doing it, right? So
Yes.
If you do something and you cross the line, but you don't know that you crossed the line, then I can't, really blame you unless it's horribly crossing the line. But if you set the boundary, and then
because I want to say a lot of the appeal of the automotive industry and trades is the camaraderie and is the friends that you make. And I was not out to set in and change the shop. I really wanted to be part of the shop. And so, yes, I did take part in the banter, and I curse like a sailor, which is awful, but I do. But, I definitely made sure that those jokes were not directed at me. And I let them know that, hey, this is the line that I'm not okay with. And they were okay with it, because you're right. Even in joking, or, shop stuff, you can cross the line or they can cross the line. And, at least they need to be given the warning of, hey, that was not cool. If you do it again, then, things will escalate. But thankfully enough, I didn't have that experience at that shop.
That's awesome. If I tell you across the line and you keep doing it, now we have a problem, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much so. So when was the first environment? And I appreciate the distinction between kind of like the shop stuff, and then where it gets into the nitty gritty. And I think sometimes it's easy to think that even like the grunt work that you did at that first job, to think that that
Mhm.
might be sexism, but often it's really because we're young and we're new, and there's a difference, right, between that.
Yeah, definitely so, because even within the trades industry, there's a lot of like the grunt worker. I want to, people have also referred to it as kind of hazing. And
Mhm.
I would not say so, but it's kind of to kind of test your character. If you're going to be willing to do, you know, the shop floors and clean up and, you know, the restrooms and take care of the phones and stuff, that kind of shows how much you're invested into the shop before they actually let you start working on things.
Yeah,
And I
and you
kind
gotta
of
start
didn't
somewhere.
really see that. You got to start somewhere, you know,
Yeah.
you definitely got to start somewhere. But as I got older and I started to see the full liability of shops and shop managers and stuff, that's when I
Mhm.
really appreciated the chances they took on me, not only as a, you know, a young female woman in the industry, but just as young techs in general, because we're young and inexperienced and we're working with vehicles that we've got people's safety on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a really important point. 100%. And we get that perspective as we get a little older, right? It's like, oh wow, they did take a chance because I'm new, not because I'm a woman, but because I'm new.
Yes,
But
very much so.
you've had a couple of situations, a couple of jobs that
I
you've worked
have.
at where you've had some issues. Let's talk about the first one that you've been at, that you were at, that turned south.
Okay, so the first one was so because I kind of landed within suspension realm and stuff, I got a really neat opportunity to kind of venture into the collision world, and I learned how to write estimates and stuff. And so this was the first non-standard company, insurance company that I was working for. They sought me out and asked me to work for them, offered me a position, and I thought it was really neat, and you know, accepted the position. My job was absolutely great up until I kind of happened to discover some unethical things that were going on. And they kind of used the sexual harassment as a weapon to push me out. I don't think they necessarily saw me as, you know, um, I don't think there was, because I had the respect before. I think this was more of a just a tactic way to push me out of the building because there was other stuff going on, fraudulent stuff that was going on that I kind of happened to come across, that I was too young to know what was going on. But since I knew about things, they needed me out. And that was going to be the quickest way to kind of push me out of the industry, was to use my gender as a weapon against me.
Wow, that's interesting. So it was really not about coming like because they were being sexist initially.
No,
It
it
was
wasn't.
you found out something you shouldn't have known, or they didn't want you to
Correct.
know. And now they needed
Yes.
to bury the evidence, so to speak.
Yes, that is exactly what was going on, and which was very hard for me to kind of wrap my head around, because before then I had them as comrades, as you know, people that I could go to in confidence and ask like really technical questions and stuff. But I mean, there was close to about maybe $2,000, $3,000 on the line per person that was being embezzled at the time. So I was kind of messing with their money, and
Mm.
like I said, they asked me to leave, and I said no, and they used my gender against me as a way to get me to leave, which was absolutely horrific. So what they did is they kind of we went from wearing like a regular uniform, Dickies and a polo top and steel toe boots, to now wearing a very business um, uniform, where I had to wear, like, they wanted me to wear skirts and heels, and like if I was working in an office, whereas I was working in shops and in tow yards and stuff. So I did. I bought, you know, slacks, and bought you know, loafers and stuff, and they wrote me up a couple of times for my uniform not being as professional as it needed to be. And in one of those shops, I got threatened that I was going to be raped if I came back, and I my let my supervisor know what happened and that I wasn't going back, and that if I was to go back, that I needed somebody else to go back with me. And they told me if I didn't go back to the shop and finish my job, I was going to be terminated, because I already had, you know, 2 write-ups because of my uniform not being business enough. And so I went to the HR department and let them know that I was filing a sexual harassment complaint, but a second party, meaning that they weren't protecting me from the customer that had made some really awful, you know, he threatened me is what really happened. And I left. And so they wanted me to go back and I refused to. And so I
And they
was,
let you.
well, they didn't let me go because by that point I had already filed the complaint. So they couldn't, because then it would be retaliation. So I then got
Good for you.
advised to go to the EEOC, and I did. And I started my case. This is where things got really, really awful. I was I was I was not beat up, but I was roughed up in the elevator. And so, they pulled my hair, you know, scuffed me up, roughed me around. And like, it wasn't enough for me to say, like, they really hurt me, but they scared me because these were 6 other individuals in the same elevator that got in with me. These were people I thought I knew and were my friends. And by that time, they had already started to make us go through, like, sexual harassment training and diversity training and all that other stuff. So they really needed me gone because of the embezzlement stuff. And I wouldn't leave because at that time I was getting paid a great amount of money for what I was doing. I loved my job. And I just really had faith in the EEOC system. So I called the police, and then I went downstairs and I spoke to the president, let him know what happened. And he kind of looked at me with like blank eyes and asked me what I expected. And I told him, well, I want to file an assault charge on these men for doing what they did. And he's like, well, they didn't really hurt you, but they could next time, right? And at that moment, I said, okay, this is way bigger than I ever thought. At this point, I'm 22.
Oh my goodness.
And so, you don't know what you don't know at 22 and how big things can get, especially when it comes down to fraud and money and embezzlement and stuff. So I called my grandfather up and I told him, come pick me up, because at that point I had a company vehicle, gave them my keys, gave them my resignation, called the cops, and cops never came. And I was devastated. So then I went to the lawyer that I was working with and let him know that I quit my job, which he was very upset because I had a really good case up until then. And he says, you do realize that this is the end of the line for you with the EEOC, right? And I told him, yes. I said, but, I also let him know that what the president said, that I didn't get hurt this time around, but that next time I could. So I had to make that choice of what's going to happen, and it was very hard because I definitely was embarrassed about the whole situation. And I'd lost my job. And at this point, I'm living alone. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm not going to pay rent. How am I going to pay off my truck? How am I going to do a lot of things? And on top of that, these within these little companies and stuff, that everybody talks, everybody knows one another. At that point, I'm going to all the body shops, talk to a big network of people. So, of course, word on the street was that I was filing a sexual harassment complaint. And at that point in time, I'm thinking this is the end of the line for me as in my automotive career. And so I ran is what I did. I went back to school and I finished my bachelor's and figured that I was just going to leave the automotive industry as a whole, because I had applied to a couple of positions and they would tell me that I had great experience, but they were going with another candidate. And so I left. I left I left the area that I live in completely and relocated. Worked in my field for maybe about a year and then decided, no, I hate this. I really miss the cars and the hustle and bustle of shops. I'm not doing this. So I applied to another insurance company in that area and they picked me up immediately and things were great for a while. And then I came back home. And funny enough, like time had passed, shops wanted me. And I realized what it was working for another great shop again in my area, and that that things change. And that whole EEOC thing, like I had kept at it. I had kept at it and without my lawyer. And funny enough, like I want to say about 7 years later, I got a check in the mail. It settled
Amazing.
itself on its own.
Well, that's good. I
Mhm.
I want to acknowledge so much about this story up until this point already, and I know it gets folks who are listening, like it gets worse because
Uh-huh.
this was her first experience with this, but there's another one. But I just at the moment with this particular experience, how incredibly overwhelming that must have been for you as such a young person at that point. And the fact that you still had the strength to stand up to it as much as you did, is absolutely inspiring. And that, I, I just, it is such a sad statement that you walked away from that experience feeling embarrassed and
I
concerned
did. I
about
thought it was
your
my
future
fault.
in the industry. Right. And yet,
Mhm.
it was not your fault, and there was no reason why you should have been penalized, and yet that is the reality of the world that we live in, where the victim is the one often who winds up feeling embarrassed, when it's the perpetrators who should be embarrassed for their behavior.
Mhm.
It's the perpetrators who should be concerned about their career, but it's the victim that often is. And I just want to acknowledge you and your strength for coming forward and talking about it, but for filing the complaint. And I get that you had to make a decision. You had to make a decision between winning a case or protecting yourself, because staying in that
Mhm.
job potentially, could have been very bad for you. You had to
Yeah.
make that choice. And I just want to acknowledge the strength that it took to do that. And I'm so grateful that you're still here with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was, my goodness, even talking about it now, it's something I very seldom have told people. And oh, the words coming out of my mouth just bring back a whole lot of emotions. But that was my first horrific um, incidents with the industry. And thankfully enough, I had enough mentors that were letting me know that that was not the case everywhere, that this wasn't, the case for that company.
Yeah. And that's a powerful thing in and of itself, because that, to you, obviously you said you ran away, and I think that's fair. You had to heal.
Mhm.
But you came back and you found the strength to come back, and that takes a lot. A lot of women, we've had several episodes about this, that women will often enter the industry and then leave because the challenges, because the fears, because of all the things that you've explained.
Mhm.
And yet you had, the beautiful part is that you already had some good experiences, so you knew that it wasn't
Yes.
all shops, and you just needed some time to heal the wounds and then come back at it.
Yes, very much so. I think had I not had an amazing auto tech teacher and first couple of shops experiences, this would have made me leave completely. So I'm very grateful to my male mentors, that did believe in me and that did give me a good, strong, you know, basis of what the automotive industry could be and how wonderful it was when it was wonderful for me. So that I didn't stay away, because I still had like that feeling that I needed to be in the industry. I loved the shop is what it comes down to. The smell of it, the sounds, everything about it is just, I don't know, it's my happy space. So for them to have taken that away from me, I was very sad. And once I kind of found myself again, and I ventured off into what I thought was going to be my forever home within my bachelor's, and I found out that that's wasn't quite for me. I said I need to go back and work on cars again, because that's what brought me a whole lot of peace, solace, and happiness. And so got back in, and we were smooth
I love
sailing
that.
for about another 7 years. 7
Okay, we got 7 good years. I
good
mean,
years. 7 good
isn't this what
years.
we hear from women so often, is, "I love the work. I love
Mhm.
the environment. I love the work, and when it's good, oh, it is so good. But when
Mhm.
it's not, it is so bad." And that's why we keep coming back, but it shouldn't have to be a fight. And that's the frustrating part. And so we're hoping for more good shops, and that it shouldn't be just a good 7-year stretch. It should be always, right?
Yeah, it should be a career-long stretch of wonderfulness, right?
Yeah.
But we know that's just
Not the
not the
case.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the good thing is that there are more good shops popping up. And
Yeah.
the wonderful thing about the automotive industry is that there is an array of career opportunities. Not only, turning wrenches and, collision stuff, but there is just so much that encompass the automotive industry that
Yeah.
it is almost impossible not to find a good job or a good place where you like the culture and the way you're treated and the pay and everything.
Yeah. Okay, we are already half an hour into this, and I want to spend some time on your most recent issue and the EEOC case that you had. So, talk to me about the shop that you wound up at, that where you really experienced the racism and sexism that we've talked about.
Okay. Yeah, so throughout the 7-year span of like the good shops, I really found out that suspension is my specialty, and my love of trucks and everything off road was a thing always, and so I got into a really cool shop that was centric around that, and things were off at the beginning. And I should have known that from the get-go, that we really need to follow our gut. And I think I filled some diversity check marks for them, and which is kind of why I was hired, as well as they definitely needed somebody that was more desert and sand centric at that point. And so I was hired on. And let me see. How do I'm trying to figure my way of words of how to say this. So the shop that I worked for, I was the only Latina in the shop, and I think probably the only Latina within a few mile radius of the shop, I guess. And so there was definitely some curiosity at the beginning about my heritage, my culture, where I was born and stuff. And initially, I thought it was just curiosity. Curiosity then turned into politics, and politics then turns into stereotypes, and stereotypes into, harassment. And I kind of didn't see the progression as I should have.
And again, I think blame yourself. Please do not blame yourself.
It's so hard not to, because you wonder if your stubbornness and trying to make things work at the perfect job, it puts you into these situations. And I'm still not 100% sure, because I definitely overstayed what my intuition told me to overstay. And I want to make sure that as women, that we know that definitely it's not your fault, but know when to leave, know when to say, this is not for me. I need to go find a better shop that's going to treat me well. And I was just of the mindset that I was not going to find it, that this was my only opportunity in the area that I really wanted to be in.
Gotcha. I want to hear that really clearly, the difference between trust your gut, but also it's not your fault, right? It is not your fault if you don't listen to your gut or you don't see the signs, because sometimes they creep up on you. And you said it, right? There's that fear that we're not going to find something better. And so you stayed, you ignored your gut and you stayed. Talk to me about how bad was it at its worst? Talk to me about what that looked like.
Oh my God. At the worst was daily harassment about like the local politics that were happening. Of course, like at that time it was the Dreamers Act and illegal immigration and stuff. And so it started with spray painting my box, like, Trump wall needs to go up. And
they
cleaned up my box.
This on your box.
Yes, they did, on my toolbox. And granted, like, I've never spoken about my political views or anything, so this was just like their assumption of what my political views were. And took, acetone, cleaned my box up, and didn't say anything. We had like a group meeting, and there was reference to border jumping and me being a wetback and stuff. And I feel really bad that I never spoke up. I never said anything, because again, this was the dream job and I didn't want to make waves. I still kind of felt at that point that it was not anything for me to bring up. And another person in the shop brought it up, took it to HR and let them know, hey, this is what's going on in the meetings. I don't feel comfortable about it. So then HR comes to me and tells me, is this happening? And I have to say, yes, it's happening. And
somebody else stood up for you.
Somebody else stood up for me, which is great. And but also I wasn't ready for everything that came with it, because then, of course, the diversity meetings happen, the gender sexual harassment meetings happen and stuff, which initially this didn't start as a sexual harassment thing either. This ended up being like a weird combination of trying to just get me out of the shop again. But so because the diversity meetings happen and they started to say like, hey, you shouldn't be referencing her heritage, or calling her Mexican or wetback, beaner, a bunch of, derogatory names. Things got really, really bad within all of my colleagues, to the point where they got a little Dora the Explorer doll, which initially began as like kind of like a funny thing, because I, kind of did look like Dora. And so initially when they first started calling me that at the beginning of the shop, it was a cute nickname. And then, somebody took it too far. They actually purchased a doll. And the first time that I saw the doll, there was a noose around her neck. So I took a picture of that and took it over to HR and let them know, hey, this is what's going on. And she kind of looked at me and she says, well, what did you expect of a shop? She says, that you're going to be hazed and people have some really crude jokes. And I said, no, this is not okay. And I said, because this started happening after the diversity talks. And I said, I don't know what was said within the diversity talks that I was not part of. I said, but it's not okay. And things just escalated. And it got to the point where they opened up her bottom and they would stick tools in her. And then, from there, it became with explicit photographs of her. And these, mind you, were getting sent to my phone. So I was saving them with timestamps and who they were coming from and stuff. And I went to a lawyer to go talk to him. Opened up an EEOC case. This time I say to myself, I'm following through on this one. And so he sends a letter of letting them know, hey, this stuff needs to stop. And I sent them a formal complaint about what had happened, how it all started, how I was being retaliated against. And then also my work hours started to go down. And the amount of pay that I had also, ended up being cut in half. And they just kind of said it was it was due to contracts and work not, coming in and things like that, which is, well documenting everything at this point. And then we also have, guests come in and of course, we would go to a cute Mexican restaurant down the road, but then they would come back and make a mess on my box or in my area with all of their leftovers and stuff. So it was day in and day out. It was awful.
I have no words. I know that so many women and minorities go through this on the regular. It is horrifying. And I am so sad that you had to experience that and go through that. And I am so inspired by your strength to take it to court, to document it the way that you did. I don't know that I would have had that strength to document in that situation.
It was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But I figured if I'm going through it, then there's so many other people going through it. Because even within the EEOC process, the lady at the front desk told me there is so much worse going on, and I cannot believe that you are filing charges for this. And I told her, I said, well, if I'm not filing charges for this is why things escalate into worse things. Because they do, it just almost seems to be like a monster that just cannot be fed. You start at the beginning of things and you accept things and you just hope things are going to change, or you laugh it off. And then the next time around, it's worse. And then it's worse. And then they ask you, well, why didn't you report it to begin with? And then you're stuck in a weird position of where you're trying to appease people and not take things personally, but you're also trying to change the narrative of the stereotypes. And then it's also a lot of that. You're happy to be in the shop.
And you're trying to survive.
So you're trying to survive. And you're exactly right. I was just trying to survive. So I was just really hoping that, things that the people that needed to be fired would be fired. And maybe I could stay happily ever after at that shop and make things work. which is not what happened.
I I hate that you are so well illustrating, but also love that you're so well illustrating with this the trap that minorities and that women experience in the workplace and in life so often is if I complain, then I'm a complainer, then I'm seen as weak, that I'm seen as the problem, that I'm seen as a troublemaker, that I'm not going to get another job, or that I'm told exactly what you were told. What did you expect, right? But on the flip side, if we do complain, now we're being told, and you were told by the EEOC, this isn't bad enough,
Yes.
right? And excuse me. So there's this catch-22 where you can't speak up, but you need to speak up, but you risk it escalating if you speak up, or you risk your security.
Yes.
And they're difficult decisions to make. And you've navigated this twice now.
Yes.
And you won your case.
I won my case, which makes me extremely happy. It was horrific to go through. I will say that, but I will say that if you document things, if you say the right things to people, like, I had to make a formal complaint and have the lawyer tell them, specify that, calling me derogatory names, playing with Dora explicitly the way that they were, and also, using my gender against me and stuff was wrong, and that they needed to stop it immediately. And that if I had any changes to pay, changes to jobs, or I was terminated, then we could file for, wrongful termination, which is exactly what happened. So I stayed there and I sucked it up, which was absolutely horrific because things definitely did escalate to the point to where I did feel threatened, and I would, run to my vehicle at the end of the day, and I would isolate myself. And finally, they used my documentation against me, because I used to document all of the specs and everything that I was doing in a little notebook, and they stole that notebook from me, and then they took it to the president of the company. The president of the company then came in and told me that I had not done my job on one of my vehicles. So I was fired on the spot and escorted out of the building. I then took that over to the lawyer, and then we continued on with the EEOC process. I then got my right to sue, and we did. And then they came back and said that they wanted to go to mediation, which of course is a big thing in most people's contracts and employment. Part of their employment packages is the right for mediation, that if should something happen, that, you're agreeing to mediation. So we did go to mediation. I presented them with all of my evidence, my pictures, and some of the, recordings that I had of stuff that was going on. And they made an offer. I told them, no, that's not enough. This is what it's going to take for me to, relocate and get back on my feet again. They made another offer, and I finally said yes. And unfortunately, the thing with the EEOC is that once you do agree for a settlement out of the court, is that you can't talk about these things publicly, and who and the whys and everything else, without some sort of retaliation, which is why we're doing this here. I think things have changed just a little bit, though. I think within the past year or so, there might have been some law changes that now say that these kind of cases can be talked about without, fear of being sued. But that wasn't the case when I did.
Right. Well, and there's the reality, right? Even if the law says it's the same as, the law may say that retaliation is illegal, but that doesn't stop it from happening, right?
No, that doesn't.
So you're still right to be, protective of your identity in this situation and sharing all of these details, because there is that very real concern, right, of blowback from it.
Yeah, definitely, because you just don't ever really know whose thoughts are where on these kind of issues. And the weird thing is that men face these issues too. Even within, like, say you get hurt on the job and you have to file for workman's comp. I've definitely seen other other of my colleagues get fired wrongfully because they had to file a workman comp claim. And it's also in their clause that it's retaliation if they do get fired for filing a workman comp claim. But they do it so cleverly that, that there's really no way to have any kind of recourse for this stuff if you don't have full documentation and emails and text messages and everything moving forward saying that, this happened to me, this is what I've done, this is how I've managed it, and that it's the company's fault of why things escalated the way that they did.
Yeah.
So, this is not even just a woman's or a minorities issue. This is a whole
it's
thing.
Systemic. It's systemic in the industries and in the trades predominantly. And in both of your situations, it started at the top, right? The president of the company, the head of the company. Yep. So it trickles down from there, and it permeates the entire industry or parts of the industry, entire shops. But it is definitely something that we see tolerated, as you said, the HR response of what did you expect, that we've accepted this kind of behavior. And when we talk about improving the conditions within the industry for women and other minorities, that will inherently improve the conditions for everybody, because it is not just women and minorities that experience these things. It's just that when you are a woman or a minority or both, you have extra things that they can use to bully you with.
Yes. And the funny thing is that sometimes it doesn't even have to start as sexual harassment or, racism and stuff. All it takes is just you rubbing people the wrong way, and they use these things as weapons against you. And because a lot of the stories usually come with the question of, why do you think it happened? And it's one of those things, unless you're inside of the head of the bullies, you don't know why. I can't say why. I think the first job I can say, okay, it was monetary, and I can now see why they did.
Sure. It happened
because
you caught them red-handed and they didn't want to be found out. But asking why it happened that sounds very victim blamey, right?
It does, but it's a
like
question
saying,
I get.
Well, your skirt was too short, that's why it happened. No, that's not why it happened. It happened because the people that you worked with were insensitive and cruel, and not only crossed the line, but leaped across the line, and were behaving in a non-professional, unacceptable way. It's just point blank. That's why it happened.
Correct. But it's one of those things that is asked of me a lot. And also I ask a lot, why did this happen? And I think it just kind of circles back around exactly what you're saying. I've never had anybody tell me that I can't be victim blaming. That makes me not feel better, but relieved that I don't have to answer the why or know the why. That it was just awful and it happening.
Yeah, it is not your fault. And the why is because they crossed the line and behaved in a way that is unacceptable.
Thank you for that.
And
Thank you for that, because I have spent years wondering why and answering why. So thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cry. I didn't.
No,
but that really hit me well in the place where I needed to, because I've always had to answer the why.
No, you don't. And do not apologize for your tears either. You are justified in them. My goodness, you have been through so much. And I just want to reiterate like how much you have always inspired me. Knowing all of these details, you inspire me even more. Knowing that you've been through all of this, that you found the courage to dig deep and file the EEOC complaint, to carry it through, to continue to put up with the harassment and the prejudice and the hate, to carry that case through, to be victorious, and then still stay in the industry, because through it all, you still love the work. And that is so incredibly moving and inspiring. I hate that you have to fight through all of this in order to do the job that you love. But I'm so inspired by you. And I need you to know that.
Thank you. And you know what? I will. Thank you. Thank you. I will let you know that, again, I really did think about leaving after all of this happened. And you were definitely somebody that I reached out to and I spoke to. And, you answered me, you asked a question of me that really sat in my mind quite a bit. You asked me if I would be doing this anyway, had I not been put into the situation, and would I be off-roading anyways? Would I be, doing the stuff that I was doing despite like having been offered that job? And I said yes. And then you looked at me and you said, there you go. You will find happiness in it again. And I definitely did at a point where I thought I never would. And so, a lot of people gave me that same advice of like, this is something that you've done always, and you can't let bad people ruin things for you, because this kind of stuff happens everywhere. Unfortunately, it's a little more predominant in the trade still, but it is something that happens everywhere. Bad people are bad people.
Yeah. And bad behavior is bad behavior. There's another guest that I had on months ago now, and I believe she's actually in the audience right now. She said hurt people. How do you say? Hurt people do hurt things, or hurt people, right? Like if you are a hurt person, if you are an angry person, if you are in pain, you cause that to others and you inflict that on others. Hurt people,
I agree.
hurt people. And
I think that's a lot of what happened. And I think that's kind of what happened with my HR reps. They were women, which made me even more saddened by the whole thing, is that my HR reps were women, and they were very like nonchalantly like, what did you like, almost even shaming me for wanting to be a part of the automotive industry differently. And they probably were hurt women. They were hurting other women, which makes me even more sad about that whole situation.
Yeah, that's a whole nother layer that we could talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I apologize for my voice, guys. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting a little, something's going on here, but we are running low on time. So my goodness, there's still so much. We barely scratched the surface, but
yes, we did.
your story is incredible. I know we could spend another couple of hours probably talking about, that piece that you just scratched on just now with like the women
mm-hmm.
and the other layer, because it's not just men in the industry, it's women, and that comes down to the truth of the matter, which is it's not men in the industry, it's not women in the industry, it's not the industry, it's human beings. There's a lot of hurt people in the world, and
yes,
there is a lot of inappropriate behavior in the world. I think where I
mm-hmm.
see the issue in the automotive industry is that we have accepted that as okay. Whereas in other industries, there is a push, there is a fight for not doing that, making that not acceptable. But in the automotive industry, it's always just been chalked up to, that's the shop life. What did you expect? That's just how shops are, and you got to have a thick skin. And it is
mm-hmm.
damaging to women, it is damaging to men, it is damaging to minorities, it is damaging to human beings, and it's not acceptable behavior, and it needs to change.
I agree 100%.
And I'm so grateful for you that you've stayed, because I think, I've had the inclination to leave too, right? I think we all have. Mm-hmm. There's times where it gets too much and we want to leave because the fight is exhausting.
It is.
But at the same time, if all the good people leave, then nothing will change. And if nobody is standing up for difference, as hard as it is to continue the fight, like we need to, because things need to change.
Yes, things need to change. And the world is changing, and we need to evolve with the world. And thank goodness, EEOC has its own flaws in itself, but it's there for a reason. It's there to provide the companies, that slap in the hand that they need, to tell them like, hey, this is not right. Things need to change. And that's exactly what they did. I might not have been able to do it vocally and stuff, but money speaks volumes. And when they had to pay me out that settlement, they were not happy.
Right. It's
And
about making them hurt, right? And it's not about you making the money. It's about them having to hurt a little bit for what they did. Talk to me
yes,
really quickly. We don't have a ton of time, but talk to me quickly.
yeah.
If somebody else is in a situation where an EEOC complaint makes sense, how do they go about doing that? I mean, that's something I never would have even thought of, honestly. And I'm embarrassed to say, because I was a pre-law student before I became a mechanic. So how does somebody go about filing an EEOC complaint? What are the ups and downs of it? Can you kind of walk us through that relatively quickly?
Sure. So the process is, if you feel that you have been discriminated against upon, like, and you have to you can go to the EEOC thing. It's gender, sexuality, your race, various ways that you can be discriminated upon. Or disability is another one too, and you document it. You go to your higher ups and you tell them, hey, um, this is going on, and you document that. You don't just have that conversation in person. You send them an email and say, this is what's happening, how it's happening. Send it to them. They then need to provide the company with, like, hey, we're now going to do a different different procedures, different ways of culture or whatever. And from there, you then have like the protection of the EEOC and the law saying that you cannot be retaliated against for bringing that up. Now, if you're fired, if you're harassed, or they make it a hostile work environment, which my first job did, you can leave and you can continue on with the EEOC path, which then you go and you file a formal complaint. And when you file the formal complaint, they will ask you for all your documentation, which that first email is going to be very important. And then the follow-up to that email of how you're being retaliated against is also very important, to let them know, hey, my hours have gone down, my pay has gone down, or whatever it is, or there's a hostile work environment now because of my complaint. You document that, you send that out, and then by this point, I handled the second one with a lawyer. The first one, my lawyer bailed out on me, but you can hire a lawyer, or you can do this alone, so long as you document everything, meticulously. And then they will review it, and they will give you what is called a right to sue. Once the company gets that right to sue, then they will then come into mediation grounds with you, which you do have to go through. You will have to meet with their lawyers and their HR team, so that way, you can try and come to a solution. If you don't you don't come to a solution or a settlement agreement, then you go to a mediation court, which is not a jury, but it's somebody that they pay a mediator to hear your story, and then he rules on it. I never made it to that point, because both of my cases settled for an amount that I felt was fair to me. Could I have gone to mediation court? Yes, but I hadn't heard any good things of it coming, so I was okay with it being a settlement, because that goes on record, on their record as a company. And that's really what I wanted, is that people to know that this company is known for doing this. They do have EEOC complaints, and they have filed a settlement on it. Because then that's kind of like a judge, jury, and executioner right there with that documentation, right?
Yeah. and it's warning to other people. Don't go here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it's a way for change for that company too.
Absolutely. We've had a couple of comments in the viewers tonight of people saying that they're experiencing this right now. So I appreciate you walking through that, and my heart goes out to anybody who is experiencing this kind of harassment or bullying, regardless of whether it's race or gender or sexual orientation or whatever it is. If you're experiencing this, my heart absolutely goes out to you, and I hope you know, like Dora does, that your passion is still worth fighting for, and there are good places out there.
There are good places, and have them go to the EEOC. It's www.eeoc.gov. There is a lot of information
below. I'll make sure that link is there for you guys. There are resources, and just hearing your story, Dora, I hope is an inspiration for others to know that you can come out the other end and be okay, that you can still find a good home, find good passion, good place to work and live your passion, where you're
Yes.
supported and where you're cared for and where you're safe. And that's
And I
so
want
important.
everybody to know that it turned out okay. You know, it was awful, and the EEOC process was not the greatest, but it turned out okay. I ended up getting a wonderful job afterwards. I'm super happy back in the industry, and things worked out. Wow. So
Yeah,
this is a happy ending story. This is not a I left and things were awful story. And just again, like to
absolutely.
reiterate what you said is that if one shop doesn't want you, another shop will.
Yeah. Even if, right? And Dora is proof of this. Even if not only did you stand up for yourself and file a complaint internally, but you filed a complaint with the freaking EEOC and won
Hmm. Hmm.
and still got hired again at other shops.
Yes.
So it is
Yes.
proof that fighting back and standing up for yourself does not brand you permanently and keep
Correct.
you out of the industry. You will, any home, any shop that would not hire you because you've stood up for yourself is not a shop that you want to work at anyway. So
Yes.
keep on moving till you find the right one, but don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. And God, I want to reiterate that point again that you said about trusting yourself. Dora, say that one more time about trusting your gut.
You have to trust your intuition. And this goes for places of work and especially people. If you just get that weird feeling, start looking. Because you know what? If they're not going to treat you right at that shop, some other shop will. And I was stubborn and wanted to make those shops work, but now that I see what I get paid and how I get treated at the other places that I've been hired afterwards, I wish I could have told young Dora that things would
Mhm.
be okay and to move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you made it out the other end. I'm so proud to know you. I'm so grateful for you. There's some questions in the audience asking how they can contact, whether they can contact or connect with you for more info. I think obviously, unfortunately, for her privacy's sake and anonymity's sake, I'm not going to be able to put any of that in the description down below. But I
Mhm.
will put the EEOC information. And Dora, if you have any specific information that you'd like me to share in the description of this video, once it's up and I write the post description on things,
Mhm.
I can include that if you've got anything you want to share. And well jointed, because I know you personally and you're the one asking that question, I will talk to Dora offline and see if maybe you guys can be connected and if she's comfortable with that. But
Yes, yes.
unfortunately, yeah.
I know who Well Jointed is, and I can
Okay.
definitely help out with that. And
Wonderful.
I think I can help out with some of the other ladies, maybe through a medium. That way, you know, my identity is protected, but also I can get them the help that is needed.
Awesome.
Because we definitely need to band together to make systemic changes.
I don't know. I feel like maybe we need to start a Dora Marquez Instagram page or some way that this continue to be your moniker and you can be a voice of change and a resource for women who are needing this as Dora Marquez. I feel like
I think
Dora the
that would
Explorer
work.
needs to make a comeback here.
I think I like that. I think I like that idea because, yeah, I think we need to explore the possibilities of being able to stand up for ourselves and work in the industry that we love. I like that.
Yeah. And to talk about it in a safe environment. So,
Hmm.
I think I'd be happy to help you and work with you on that one. So we might need to talk some more. Dora,
Let's do that.
this has been wonderful. I want to again acknowledge even doing this in with a character and with your voice changed, like all of that. It's still dangerous and risky for
Hmm.
you to come on here and be as honest and open as you have been, and it's took incredible vulnerability for you to share all of this. So I truly appreciate your willingness to share not only um, how bad it got but also the positive outcome and how you were able to persevere and continue on. And you are incredible. I just want to acknowledge you and celebrate you and thank you so very much for being on here with us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me and for letting me tell my story. This was healing, and again, like the way you said, it was not my fault. And everybody needs to know that if they're going through this stuff, it's not your fault, even though it feels like it at times. But even I had to be reminded throughout this talk that it was not my fault.
No. It is not your fault. You're an incredible woman. Thank you so much. Folks at home, thank you guys for tuning in for this really important conversation. We have more of these conversations need to be had. And definitely, if you are experiencing this currently, or you know somebody who's experiencing this, there will be a link to the EEOC in the description down below. Please know that there are protections in place. You do have a voice, that your voice matters. And also please know that there are other places out there. There are other shops, there are other employers, ones that are safe for you to be and will allow you to thrive and grow and continue to do the things that you love doing. So know that that is out there. This series, and hopefully all of you guys being here and tuning in each week, hopefully a part of this changing, right? That's really the hope, that we start tipping the scales, because we know that there's a lot of crappy shops, but we know that there's some good shops, and hopefully we start tipping those scales. So it's more good shops than bad shops, and there's more good people than bad people. And we start pushing this out of our industries that we love so very much, so that this stops being normal and accepted behavior within the trades. So thank you all for being part of this. Thanks for coming back each week. We'll have more great conversations in the coming weeks. If there's a topic that you would like us to talk about, please let me know in the comments. Shoot us a message. I'm happy to do special episodes with specific topics. So please reach out, let me know. Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe. Please share this episode if you got value from it. There's probably several folks that you know who need to see this and need to meet Dora and hear and be inspired by her. So thank you guys. Have a fantastic rest of your evening. Until next week, be good to yourselves, be good to one another, be good human beings, and we'll see you later.